Hey, we've had this question a lot lately. Rate holds with quick possessions or leasebacks. So, if you have a buyer client or you're dealing with an offer on a listing where the buyer has a rate hold in and the mortgage has to close by X date for them to get that rate held. So, talk about a few different scenarios here because there's a few moving parts. So, the main one being the lender has to approve it. So, the most common issue is that the lender will approve that buyer as an owner-occupied buyer, and so they can't take possession and rent the house out. That's basically mortgage fraud. So it has to be disclosed to the lender. So work with your mortgage partners. We've talked to a bunch of our people in-house here. Some lenders will accept it. They understand the reasonable nature of it, and others just have a hard and fast rule they won't. So choose that, like make sure you're aware of those dynamics before you're looking at properties. You might only look at vacant possession properties or something if that's the dynamic that they need to get into. They want this lower rate, so then they need to structure it that way. If the lender's okay with it, then here's how you can structure those deals. So the most common scenario is either a seller that's gonna stay in the home until they actually wanna physically move out. So in those cases, the deal's going to physically close. They're going to give the money and get the money. You're going to have a term in there that the buyer will lease or rent back the property to the sellers until X date. So you'll do up a rental agreement with them, and ideally the lawyer's involved to make sure that everything's covered, but the buyer's going to take possession. So they're going to get insurance. It's not a tenancy at will scenario. It's like not the buyer taking possession. The buyer's closing on the property, everything goes through on the sale, and then the seller just stays in the home. The other scenario is with a tenant. So we've had a couple of those where the tenant is being like assumed for a limited period of time, and then the buyer will take over after. Same thing, to get that rate hold done, they're going to do it. Those can be more problematic, like I said, with the lender because it's an actual tenancy. So make sure it's in the contract if they're assuming an existing tenancy, and if so, are they on a lease? Is it month to month? Like, make sure that's documented. The Tenancies Act still applies, and in that scenario, so if the buyer just thinks they can buy and kick the tenant out whenever they want, they can't. If it's a lease, they can't kick them out to the end of the lease. If it's month to month, the buyer, the new owner, can give 90-day notice, clear tenancy months, so that's before the end of the month to start the 3 months, that they intend to occupy the property. That's a legal reason to give notice, but be aware of those timelines. I'll put a couple links below to the Tenancies Act stuff that relates to that, and same thing goes if the seller's staying. Remember that Tenancies Act now applies. So make sure it's super clear in your contracts and you talk to the lawyer handling the closing on exactly how to handle that. But as always, feel free to reach out to us. We can help you navigate every individual situation, but this one's coming up a lot, and so we want to do a video on it. And make sure you talk with your mortgage partner, and hopefully you're working with one of our great in-house mortgage people here so that they can actually help navigate them, because I've heard lots of stories of our people kind of taking over files to help kind of solve problems that have been dropped by another mortgage person. So build up that trust with your buyers, especially have that level of rapport, be on the same team with the mortgage partner to get deals done, then help people lock in those great rates.